I started 2 cucumber plants side by side. One towers over me now, thick with fruit, while its twin looks yellow and sickly. My only secret was a simple homemade brew of yeast and sugar I poured on the roots. It triggered a surge so fast I had to brace the vines. This is a biological hack you will not find in any store. Living organisms simply cannot sit on a shelf. Can a $1 packet of yeast truly transform my harvest watch until the end? My evidence begins with one truly explosive experiment. I started my logbook with 2 identical seeds dropped into fresh soil one cool morning in early May. Both plants got the same sun water and care except for just one specific watering. On day 7, I poured 1 quart of my homemade yeast brew at the base of one plant. The other only got plain water. By day 12, the difference was already visible. My control plant, A, stood only 8 inches tall. Its leaves were tinged yellow and curled as if fighting invisible stress. Plant B, the yeast-fed twin shot, passed a foot tall, with rich, glossy green leaves unfurling everywhere. I noted in the margins that plant B was growing like mad. I had never seen anything like it. My daily entries started reading like a race. By day 15, plant B hit 18 inches and was already pushing out new side shoots. On day 20, the first flowers appeared. By day 28, my control plant was barely knee-high with thin stems. Plant B towered at 40 inches thick as a broom handle and heavy with blooms. I recorded the moment I was forced to add a second stake just to keep my yeast-fed vine upright. When harvest time finally came, my scale told the whole story. Plant A gave me 3 cucumbers weighing just under 1 pound total. But plant B yielded 9 plump fruits weighing a total of 3.1 pounds. I logged that fruit count and weight in ink on July 12th. My experiment ended with one very simple conclusion. 1 watering and 1 ingredient gave me a yield triple what the control produced. The numbers are right there in black and white. No special soil or secret compost. Just a $1 packet of yeast and some sugar. My notes captured my total disbelief. I had never seen a harvest quite like this. Join my channel. Same seeds, same care. The only difference was the yeast. In gardens across the whole world, brewing up this living fertilizer is actually nothing new at all. I have seen how farmers in South Korea rely on fermented plant juice, also known as FPJ. They pack wild greens with brown sugar, letting microbes work magic in a shaded jar for a week or more. This liquid, alive with yeast and bacteria, gets splashed on fields to spark massive growth and resilience. Natural farming movements simplify the process even further. I just stir rice flour or wash water with sugar and let it ferment into a truly potent yeast culture in just a few days. Both methods use an invisible workforce of microbes to unlock nutrients, boost root mass, and protect crops from harsh stress. In English cottage gardens, I know comfrey teas have their own legacy. For generations, gardeners have chopped up comfrey leaves and soaked them in water with a bit of sugar, waiting for that mixture to froth and darken. That bubbling and the smell are signs that the fermentation is finally in full swing. These brews, rich in potassium and growth promoters, have been poured around tomatoes, cucumbers, and beans for centuries. Even in Soviet-era gardens' handwritten manuals describe yeasty ferments for cheap plant feeding when fertilizer was out of reach. What unites these traditions is my belief that bubbling ferments do something bottled chemicals simply cannot do. They activate the soil feed roots directly and set off a massive chain reaction of growth. This yeast and sugar brew is no trick. Subscribe now to see me test more garden hacks like this. I look at this as a simple modern take on an old global tradition. From Korean rice paddies to old English gardens, I know gardeners have trusted fermentation to stretch harvests and revive tired soil. Today, I am showing you how a simple packet of yeast and some sugar lets us tap into that legacy right on our counters. My kitchen counter becomes the workshop. I take 1 tablespoon of dry active yeast, any brand works, even that old expired packet hiding in the back of my drawer. 2 tablespoons of plain granulated sugar follow next, feeding the hungry yeast. Then I add 1 quart of warm water, not hot enough to burn me and not cold enough to chill it. Temperature really matters. Too hot, The yeast dies. Too cold, it goes to sleep. I stir until the sugar dissolves and the yeast looks cloudy beige and alive. I place the lid on top loosely so the air and gas have room to escape. Never seal it tight. If I tightened it, the pressure from fermentation could actually make my glass jar pop. I leave it for 2 hours. Please subscribe for more garden tips. For the best results, I let it work for 12 hours. The sign of success is a thick foam on top, just like the head on a freshly poured beer. That foam is living proof. The biology is awake and multiplying. If I see no foam, I check the temperature or try a new packet. Yeast is cheap. Once the foam peaks, my brew is ready. I never pour this concentrated mix straight onto my plants. It is far too strong. Instead, I fill a 5-gallon bucket with water and add the entire quart of brew. This creates the perfect dilution, strong enough to feed and gentle enough to avoid burning my plant's roots. I stir it well and use it immediately before the microbes settle or go flat. This process is fast, cheap, and easy. Hit that like button. No special tools or waiting weeks, just yeast, sugar, and warm water transformed into a living potion in one single afternoon. This base alone is enough to trigger a growth surge, so please tell me your results in the comments below. When I want to push my results even further, I add a few household ingredients to make a complete feed. Each additive brings a specific nutrient to my table. It is targeted and cheap. I start with wood ash. Sifted from my wood stove, it is packed with potassium, which helps my plants move water, build strong stems, and produce heavy fruit. I stir 1 to 2 cups of fine ash into my 5-gallon bucket of diluted yeast water. More is not always better. Too much can raise soil pH and lock out nutrients. I stick to the low end for alkaline soil or skip it if I am unsure. Next, I grab Epsom salt, which scientists call magnesium sulfate. Just 1 tablespoon per batch gives me enough magnesium for those lush, dark green leaves we all love. Since magnesium is the heart of chlorophyll, a little bit goes a very long way for us. If my plants look healthy, I usually cut the dose in half. I sprinkle it in, stir it up, and then I move on. Eggshell powder rounds it out. 2 tablespoons of these grounds give my plants calcium for rock-solid stems. Calcium takes time to release, but my yeast brew's mild acidity helps break it down. If I am out of eggshells, I will use lime or oyster shells, but I measure carefully. I have learned that too much calcium can interfere with other essential minerals. Now my full recipe covers all the major nutritional bases. Potassium for fruit, magnesium for leaves, and calcium for structure, all in one living solution feeding my soil. Each ingredient is optional, but together they create a super feed that rivals anything in a bottle. Subscribe. Now, I always mix thoroughly. Use this solution fresh and test on 1 plant before feeding an entire garden bed. With these small tweaks, my yeast brew becomes way more than just a growth hack. It is a complete living meal for every plant I grow. I have seen researchers at the University of Minnesota trace this baker's yeast power to the microscopic level. Saccharomyces cerevisiae, the same stuff that makes bread rise, becomes a biological engine once it hits my soil. Once activated by sugar and warmth, these fungi pump out compounds my plants read as growth signals. Mainly, it is cytokinins and auxins hormones that trigger cell division and make my roots stretch deep. When my roots soak these up, they get a green light to expand, pulling in more water. The result is a denser root system that supports taller stems and massive leaves above the ground. I have also discovered a second mechanism: nutrient unlocking. As yeast cells multiply and die, they release phosphorus and nitrogen that my roots can absorb instantly. In trials, crops treated with yeast showed 20 to 30% higher yields than the ones without it. It works best in poor soil, where yeast acts as a living bridge between locked minerals and roots. Just 1 watering can save a struggling plant, giving it a flush of nutrients right when it needs them. Under the surface, I have seen yeast act like a powerful biological shield for my plants. By taking over the root zone, it blocks out harmful bacteria, forming a shield against nasty invaders. This probiotic effect is real. Plants treated with yeast have fewer diseases and recover faster from stress. The benefits go way beyond just nutrition. Yeast activity helps my plants regulate water loss, making them much tougher against drought and summer heat. It is like a living insurance policy, a partnership that boosts growth and helps my garden weather any storm. It is all triggered by a little yeast and sugar from my shelf. Like this video. Store-bought fertilizers promise instant results, filling the shelves at every garden center I visit. Yet none of those jugs contain a living, bubbling brew like the one I mix on my counter. The reason for that really comes down to both biology and business. See, living yeast never stops. Once I wake it up with sugar, the cells ferment and release carbon dioxide gas. Inside a sealed bottle, that gas has absolutely nowhere to go. Pressure builds fast, and within days, the cap bulges or the whole thing leaks out. If I left it long enough, the bottle could burst. Even vented caps cannot keep up, and the liquid spoils as the yeast runs out of food. Big companies avoid this by selling salts and dead minerals that sit on shelves for years. No gas, no spoilage, and zero risk. But that stability comes at a high price. Synthetic formulas rely on manufactured chemicals that are processed just for shipping and long storage. And those costs climb quickly. A 5-pound bag of a big brand can cost me $30 to $50. Concentrated bottles cost even more. Tell me your secrets below. I've found that my homebrew yeast solution costs me less than $1. I simply mix baker's yeast, sugar, and water to make a gallon of living feed for pennies. There is no patent or fancy blend here, just a recipe I make in minutes. Garden supply companies can't profit from something so simple and perishable. To put live yeast water on a shelf requires refrigeration and vented bottles, driving up costs and shrinking margins for everyone. So they stick to what they control, shelf-stable products that last for years instead of days. For a gardener like me, this gap in the market is my secret advantage. You can't box this living brew, but I make it fresh at home for a tiny fraction of the cost. The math is simple. Biology won't fit in a bottle, but it fits the rhythm of my results-driven, frugal garden. I know everyone wants a miracle, but I look for the real numbers behind the gains. In my trials, wheat and sugar beet treated with yeast saw yields 20 to 30% higher than untreated ones. This isn't just a lucky fluke. I have seen these repeatable results across many different types of soils and climates. I don't just chase those 6-foot cucumbers that act as rare outliers. Those are the results that turn heads and spark real curiosity in our community. For me, the jump is usually measurable but a bit more modest. A 20% boost means I get 5 tomatoes instead of 4 from the same patch each season. Over a full season, that difference really adds up for me. Safety matters to me as much as my results. My yeast brew is quite potent even when I dilute it down. Using too much too often can stress my roots or invite unwanted pests. I've found the sweet spot is one application every 7 to 14 days. Giving my plants more frequent doses doesn't actually double the final effect. I risk tipping the balance, especially with my young or potted plants. I always start with a test. I treat one plant and watch it for a week before scaling up my operation. Pale leaves or wilting mean my solution is too strong or the soil is already rich. I just dial back the concentration or wait longer between my applications. This variability is just part of my experiment. I've noticed that soils low in nutrients often respond quite dramatically to this. My more fertile patches might only show a very subtle boost in growth. The crop type matters too. My leafy greens and tomatoes benefit most, while root crops are usually less responsive. Climate, my watering habits, and even the yeast brand can nudge my results either way. Don't just take my numbers at face value. You and I should run our own trials and see. Log your starting conditions and hit subscribe to help us compare these harvests together. The recipe is simple, but the data I collect moves my story forward every single day. For any gardener willing to try, I'm extending an open invitation. Replicate my steps, record everything, and comment below to share what happens. The promise isn't magic. It's just a living experiment I'm running. This grows with every new set of hands we get into the dirt. Today, I see chemical fertilizer sales topping $200 billion every year. Living solutions. Like my yeast water transform gardens for pennies, so biology isn't the barrier. It's just old habits and industry inertia. With food prices spiking and droughts hitting, I'm starting a revolution in my own dirt. Subscribe. Seeing growth this fast is never a miracle. I made that choice. What will you feed your garden hit like too?